wanted to give you a little bit of help on the rabbit racer game. What you are doing, if you look at your directions, is creating a button that's called BTN1. You're going to set it up below the far right rabbit, and you're going to make sure it's drawn on the screen. Now, they give you some code hints over here that will help, but what they don't tell you is that that draw function is already there. So if you go down to the bottom, it says draw the button, which is all well and good. But what most people are doing is going ahead and putting that draw function in down here too. The problem with that is there's already a draw function on there. And if you put a second draw function in there, you're nesting a function and a function, and it's not going to work. So what you need to do is you actually need to scroll up to line 116, where that variable is already created for that button that you have to create. Then you're going to hit enter at the end of that variable to move that semicolon down and get it out of the way. In fact, if you want, you can just delete it. And then you're going to go ahead and set up that new variable, new button, which is a command that they know. This one is a little tricky because you're going to have a parentheses, then a left squiggly bracket. Then you're going to set up the X location of it, lowercase, and the Y location of it. And if you notice, there's a comma at the end. And I'm not going to put the number in because I want you to figure it out. Then after the Y, you're going to come down here and you're going to put the right squiggly bracket, then the parentheses, because they have to match up the order that they were here, and your semicolon. And at this point, I'm going to put 1 and 1 in here just so it does it, even though that's obviously not where it belongs. So now I've got a button created, but I haven't drawn it yet. So now I'm going to go down here inside my draw function, and I'm going to call that, and then I'm going to tell it to draw it with the parentheses and a semicolon. Now, you notice my button is up here in the corner, and that's where I told it, and it's yelling at me because it's in the wrong spot, which is okay. At that point, you'll go to the next step. And what they've done is they've added some more parameters to your button. So you're going to have to add a comma at the end of your Y. Then you're going to have to put a width in, fill in the blank with how wide you need it, a height in, fill in the blank with how high, a color, and it needs to look just like this, and then you put your color in the blank. Then a label, which is what your button will say. You need to make sure that you have a comma at the end of each one of these parameters, and that you put whatever is going to be on your label in quotation marks. All of that goes here inside your button. And it's going to yell at me because I'm not putting in numbers. And notice at the end of each word, it is a colon, not a semicolon. So you need to make sure you get that right, because that is a little bit unusual compared to what you're used to doing. The color can be whatever you want, and the label can be whatever you want. Just make sure it's in quotation marks. Okay. It's, again, still yelling at me because I haven't put height and width in, but that's for you to figure out. And if you don't get it the right size, it will give you an orange message up here telling you it needs to be smaller. Finally, after you've done that, when you get to step 3, you're going to set up an on-click function inside the button. When you're doing the on-click, you're going to be working with an array. So I want to kind of go over that. T-I-O-N, there we go. I want to kind of go over that because it's a little bit tricky and you haven't had experience with arrays yet. So we're working with rabbits, which has already been declared in your code earlier. And you're going to actually use a square bracket, which is on the same key as your curly bracket. Now, an array lets you store multiple values in a single variable. In this case, The array is used to store the number of rabbits we have. And if you saw when it started down here at the very beginning, it's not going to let me do it because that you can look up here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 rabbits. But when you work with an array and we count items, it doesn't start counting at 1. It starts counting at 0. So using that information, you need to figure out what rabbit number this one is, because it's the one you're going to control. And you're going to put that number inside that square bracket. And then you're going to put a dot, and you're going to tell the onClick function what you want the rabbit to do when you click. So you've got a blank here you're going to have to fill in. And again, not going to give you that information. You've got to figure it out. But when all is said and done, it will look like this screen up here, and you can push the button and it will make your little rabbit hop, and you can win the race. Hopefully this will help, but at the same time, you've got to figure out what goes in these based on the clues I gave you. I'm not giving you those answers.